So, President Trump hosted a social media summit. As seen by this video on the official White House YouTube channel, President Trump hosts a social media summit.
So this is a historic day. Never before have so many online journalists and influencers come together in this building to discuss the future of social media. Each of you is fulfilling a vital role in our nation. You're challenging the media gatekeepers and the corporate censors to bring the facts straight to the American people. Together you reach more people than any television broadcast network by far. Free speech is a bedrock of American life. Our constitutional rights must be fiercely protected. And today I'm directing my administration to explore all regulatory and legislative solutions to protect free speech and the free speech rights of all Americans. We hope to see transparency, more accountability, and more freedom.
You know, that music made it sound like it was some kind of epic movie moment or something. Pretty cool. Also, did anybody else chuckle at Tim Pool's beanie poking out from the crowd? Hope it matched his suit. But the old media was, as just about everybody predicted, absolutely furious that YouTubers and internet personalities were invited to discuss the issue of social media censorship. Or really, any issue at all, instead of them. They believe that it's their sole right to determine what people think. Or, in the words of Carlos Maza,
this is called gatekeeping, and it's one of the most important things journalists do.
For example, here's CNN talking about Trump's 6 false claims during the summit. Let's take a quick look at them. There is no evidence that Twitter or other social media companies have made it difficult for people to follow Trump. We obviously can't verify what certain people might have told Trump in private about following him on social media, but following him is not complicated. Doing so is simply a matter of signing up for an account, searching his name, and clicking a single button. I'm not surprised that CNN opens up with entry-level obfuscation. You can't follow somebody on Twitter if you've been banned from Twitter. And we all know that shadow banning also happens on Twitter too. Yeah, Jack Dorsey testified to Congress that it doesn't, but there's also evidence that Twitter turned its shadow banning off for that one day, so he wouldn't be lying. Trump touted the low unemployment rate for women, saying it's the best in 75 years. Trump exaggerated slightly. The women's unemployment rate for June is 3.6%, a tick above the 3.4% in April and 3.5% in May. Those are excellent numbers, but it has been 66 years since the women's rate has been this low, not 75. Oh no, I guess CNN's got you there, Trump. On something completely trivial. Trump said they go through houses, they go up, they ring doorbells, they talk to people. How many toilets do they have? How many desks do they have? How many beds? What's their roof made of? The only thing we can't ask is, are you a citizen of the United States? Trump is wrongly suggesting that the decennial census asks households about the number of toilets in a house. He could be referring to supplemental surveys from the Census Bureau, which do ask questions about living conditions of a small sample of households. If that's the case, then he's still wrong, since those surveys do ask questions of citizenship. I'm sure technically he is wrong, but when I read that passage, it sounds to me he's saying that the government is empowered to ask a bunch of trivial questions, but is hamstrung to ask questions that are actually its business, like citizenship. But more importantly, if these supplemental surveys do ask questions of citizenship, why are you so opposed to asking everyone? You seem to be okay with it here. There were nowhere close to 21,000 people outside the rally as Trump was speaking, and the arena had a capacity of 20,000 that night, not many more than 21,000. Yeah, this is something the media likes to do, argue with Trump over his crowd size. I'm sure there are times when Trump's blowing up his crowd numbers to look good, and I'm sure there are times when the media lies to make him look bad. My only real question is, why do you bother doing this, CNN? I think everybody knows that Trump's an egotistical blowhard, but that's his brand. That's not CNN's brand. So when you get into a slap fight with him over this stuff, you just look petty. You look at Biden. They say he had 600 people. That wasn't 600, that was 150 people. Independent observers reported that Joe Biden did indeed have 600 people at his first public event, after announcing his candidacy for the Democratic presidential nomination. Oh god, now you're doing the same thing, just the other way around. Now you're playing the numbers game for your guy, but pumping them up, the same way Trump does to his own. Who cares, man? You're a news organization. Talk about the issues, not this high school popularity contest nonsense. Maybe you think the best way to influence people is through peer pressure, but most of us grew out of that a long time ago. I know I'm not done the article yet, but you know what I just realized? CNN hasn't talked about the meat of the social media summit at all. In this article, talking about the social media summit, CNN has chosen to spend their one click that we might give them nitpicking Trump over nothing. I hope that was worth it, CNN, because I'm never coming back. How about MSNBC? Trump's closed-door social media summit is pretty spooky. I presume by closed door, you mean invite only and I wasn't invited. President Trump's social media summit is a primer for the 2020 race. Attendees, known for everything from dank memes to conspiracy theories, will be meeting with the president. Dank memes are the new social scare, guys. It was rock and roll for a while, then comics, then D&D, video games, and now it's memes. Think of the children.
He is among the conspiracy theorists and right-wing internet personalities who will get an audience with the commander-in-chief, the leader of the free world, President Trump, this afternoon to talk about what the president describes in a tweet today as tremendous dishonesty, bias, discrimination, and suppression practiced by certain companies like Twitter, Facebook, and Google. Those platforms, right, have denied any censorship.
Well, of course they deny any censorship. They're the ones being accused of it. And when the president accuses you of censorship, if you've got no plans to actually change, your best hope really is to double down. But more to the point, I thought you guys on the radical left were all about believing the victims. You seem to have thrown your hat in with the accused pretty quickly this time.
By the way, they were not invited to today's media summit.
They weren't invited because they are the problem. It's not a summit with social media, it's a summit about social media, hearing from the independent voices that use it, who are affected by its policies. Again, the social media companies are the accused, not the victim. And I know you know this, because the mainstream media reported on it, but big names in social media have already been to the White House to give their take on things back in April. They've had their say, and the only reason you're crying foul is because we're finally getting to have ours too.
We also know that on the list of provocateurs who are on that list, Ali Alexander.
Wait. Provocateurs? Tim Pool is a provocateur? Also, you do realize the guy's face is in every single one of his videos, right? There's no reason to have some anonymous shadow image. Here, you know what? Here. I fixed your video for you. I just did your job. I'm better at this than MSNBC.
Listen, this is legitimizing people who otherwise wouldn't have had such a big platform to talk about trolling, harassment, disinformation, etc.
Yeah, that's the point. It's legitimizing people who don't have a big platform, specifically because the only reason they do not is due to Silicon Valley putting their thumb on the scales. Algorithms get tweaked, posts get censored, accounts get banned, all in such a way to limit the discoverability of independent voices and promote mainstream ones. White House exposure is just one way to level the playing field. Trump has largely invited people who have earned their legitimization, but have had it unfairly taken away from them by the social media cartel.
You know, if you talk to disinformation researchers about this, they all make these network graphs that show sort of the range and scope of disinformation and how it travels. And a lot of these people are at the center of these network graphs.
Oh, you mean that alternate influence piece of garbage? You know, that report that showed all of these politically very different YouTubers all linked together as part of some alt-right network solely because they debated each other or appeared together or whatever? Yeah, see, when I look at this, I see a group of people who have almost nothing in common, except that they're not radical leftists. That's it. There's basic conservatives, trad thoughts, centrists, classical liberals, center-lefties, white nationalists, trolls, basically all possible groups except card-carrying progressives. Actually, no, because Destiny's on there. Your research is trash.
Do we know if anybody from sort of the more leftist end of the spectrum has been invited to this?
Not really. There's a guy named Tim Pool who says he's on the left, but he spends a lot of time attacking the left now.
That's because Tim Pool is a center-lefty who's not willing to cede the left to the radicals. And I kind of view myself the same way. I'm still center-left, and I still spend most of my time criticizing the radical left, because at this point, the radical left has gone so far off the deep end that they're more of a threat than the radical right, even from a center-left point of view. The neo-Nazis might be dangerous, but at least there's only a couple thousand of them. Antifa is absolutely everywhere, attacking civilians and journalists with impunity.
I want to say it's almost entirely people who push innuendo on the internet. This is not about censorship. This is about protecting a strategy for 2020. Brad Parscale, who ran Trump's digital campaign in 2016, now runs the 2020 campaign. They understand how important it is to get innuendo out about candidates and innuendo about enemies of Donald Trump out into the public sphere.
When he says innuendo, he's referring to two things. One, memes. Think of the children. Two, more importantly, an unfiltered truth, untouched by the bias and the rhetoric and the agenda of the mainstream media. A truth without gatekeeping. An internet full of independent creators of all political persuasions allows the public to see the full story and make up their own minds on context and interpretation. Yes, it puts responsibility on the viewer to not be a sheep, but that's how we want it to be. But let's move on to the unholy trinity of villainy. Vice, Vox, and The Verge. Trump invites fringe social media company popular with Nazis to the White House. Minds features far-right figures the same way that Facebook and Twitter do. Far-right individuals use the platform. What's next, Vice? A headline like, far-right figures may be communicating via commonly used cell phone carriers? In fact, in this article, Vice says Minds was once home to several neo-Nazi extremist groups. Yeah, again, so was Twitter and Facebook. It doesn't even matter that Minds banned those groups, because it's been put on their permanent record. You know, when I finished high school, I figured we'd have put this kind of nonsense behind us. But it seems like the man-children activists over at Vice are still keeping score. The summit will be attended by an assortment of individuals connected to nationalist movements, QAnon, and anti-Semitic conspiracies surrounding George Soros. I don't know much about QAnon. They seem on the surface like a more right-leaning, less reliable version of Veritas, so whatever. But Trump's a nationalist, so there's no surprise that he invited nationalists to his shindig. And as for Soros, it's not really a conspiracy theory when you publicly admit what you're doing in your own words, is it? Tim Pool, a right-wing media figure who once worked at Vice News, tweeted an invitation to the summit. Oh, Vice, are you admitting to being a right-wing publication? Because that's what I'm reading here when I put on my social justice glasses. Here, just let me write another headline, okay? Right-wing publication Vice exposed as once having employed YouTube beanie enthusiast Tim Pool. There. That's about the quality of your reporting, isn't it? Honestly, the whole thing just sounds like whining about independent voices finally breaking free from the mainstream jackboot that's been pressed against their necks ever since Trump took office. Vice, the reason that you weren't invited is because you're the one wearing the boots. Another article from Vice called the summit bonkers. It brought up that Project Veritas's James O'Keefe attended, labeling him, again, a provocateur, as well as the fact that Twitter went down for the day just as #SocialMediaSummit began blowing up, calling it yet another conspiracy theory. But there's not much here that's really different. It's just a bunch of journalists whining and activists running interference for big tech. Here's Vox's take. Trump's social media summit was a circus. Its aftermath was even worse. Oh yeah, that picture there, I saw the video to that. Gorka strode up to reporter Brian Karam and called him a punk? Wait, that's not what the video showed.
Don't be sad. Don't be sad.
No, I'm just standing around. This is a group of people that are eager for demonic possession.
Demonic possession. You're a journalist, right?
That's right. Hey, come on over here and talk to me, brother. We can go outside and have a long conversation.
You're threatening me now in the White House. In the Rose Garden. You're threatening me in the Rose Garden.
Get him.
You are a punk. You're not a journalist. You're a punk.
Go home. Journalist, go home. Hey, Gorka, get a job.
Hey, just for the record, he'd kick your punk ass.
Yeah, the video showed Brian threatening to start a fight, daring Gorka to step forward. And when he did, all Brian could do is fold his hands in front of him like a chump. And Vox, you really think it's Gorka's fault? The journalist cries out in pain as he strikes you. The goal of the White House Social Media Summit wasn't actually to highlight bias that social media companies have against conservatives or other groups, because there's no evidence such bias exists. Are you kidding me? Really, are you guys this ridiculous? Let's do a few quick searches on Incognito. Here's one everyone knows about. Feminist Own Compilation. Top result. Why office air conditioning is sexist. Really? This is not at all what I was looking for. Ben Shapiro's feud with Rosie O'Donnell. Top 10 feminist moments of 2018. Women debate fat acceptance. It eventually recommends a channel full of what I actually searched for. Compilations of feminists getting owned, with views in the millions on many of its videos, but none of those videos appear in the actual search. How about the topic of today, the Social Media Summit? Fox, VOA News, MSNBC, PBS, ABC, Washington Post, etc., etc. Not a single YouTuber discussing the event, despite the videos made by YouTubers having way more hits, and the event being about YouTubers. What's on YouTube's trending tab? Okay, mostly normie vomit. Wait, creator on the rise? I get more hits than these chumps. Where's my on the rise status? How about on the news trending? Oh, surprise, surprise, it's all of the alphabet networks again. Check this out. 111 views in 52 minutes by Bloomberg. I'm not usually one to brag, but even I get more views in that span of time. When Vox says no bias exists, either they're painfully bad at their job, or their camp benefits from the bias that exists. And finally, on The Verge, the White House Social Media Summit was full of hypocrisy and comedy. I half expected the byline to say, and that's a bad thing. The stuff that conservative voices think of does not always reach the maximum possible audience. Sometimes conservatives do not appear as high as they would like to in search results. Sometimes they get suspended or even banned. This has led to much conspiratorial thinking that liberal-leaning Silicon Valley is throttling their access in an effort to tip the scales of democracy. It's not a conspiracy theory. We've all seen the Project Veritas video. Silicon Valley has tried to scrub the internet of it, but we've all seen it. It's still up on BitChute. We all know the truth. This is their actual plan. Conservatives typically take great pains to protect the free market from undue interference from the government, but social networks are powerful enough that, in this case, Republicans intend to intervene. And they absolutely need to. Social media and journalists and many others since 2016, hell, since 2014, have begun to publicly misbehave so bad that it beggars belief. Before Gamergate and Brexit and Trump, these people still did all of this nonsense, but they did it silently and quietly and in private. But as soon as the public became aware of it, it's almost like these people said, screw it, they already know the truth. Let's do it out in the open and ramp it up to 11 because the jig is up and they can't stop us anyway. Elsewhere, Senator Josh Hawley has proposed legislation that would require large social networks to treat every political opinion equally, which would be great news for Nazis. But even in such a world, feed-based platforms will still have to rank and recommend content. Many conservative complaints revolve around the fact that they do not always rank at the top. No, the complaint is that their rankings are not actually listed in order of their rank, which is what you'd expect. The trending tab on YouTube might as well be called YouTube-approved content, because it's got nothing to do with what's actually trending. Feed-based platforms do not have to recommend content at all, and the only thing that they have to do to rank content properly is simply present it in order of popularity. Most of the other articles floating around all sound like these handful that I've shown you. Lots of upper-class socialists running interference for big companies, as they bizarrely like to do. Lots of journalists whining that they're no longer the great censor, and that Trump is willing to simply sidestep them, not just on Twitter anymore, but in real life too. Lots of denial and labeling legitimate complaints as conspiracy theories, despite the mounting evidence to the contrary. The Veritas video, James Damore, YouTube's trending tab being a joke, Facebook banning Paul Joseph Watson for no reason, Twitter's misgendering speech on Joe Rogan, Alex Jones' complete expulsion from the entire internet, Sargon's demonetization and removal from Patreon for a joke, Carlos Mazza's VOD adpocalypse for Crowder's joke. Eventually, it stops being anecdotes and starts being evidence. The people who control the world's online speech all live and work in a very small, very radical section of California. They are not fit to be the gatekeepers of free thought, any more than the mainstream journalists are fit to be the gatekeepers of the truth. They need to either shape up or be brought down. Let's hope Trump follows through.